The first story is documented on Wednesday, January 11th, 2017. The follow-up story is on Thursday, January 12th, 2017. Ben Wright of the Columbus Ledger-Enquirer wrote a story on the death of Hector Arreola, tagged "Man Dies Day After Head Injury and Struggle with Police." A day after Columbus police officers struggled with a bloodied Hector Arreola on a disorderly conduct call on Moss Drive, the man died at Midtown Medical Center while a Georgia Bureau of Investigation probe is underway. Arreola, 30, was pronounced dead at 3 p.m. Tuesday at the hospital, Deputy Muskogee County Coroner Charles Newton said his body will be transported to the crime lab in Decatur for an autopsy. The family of Arreola is represented by Columbus attorney Stacey Jackson, who is trying to find out how you go from a misdemeanor arrest to death. "I think not only the Arreola family, but the community deserves to know what happened," he said. When he was taken into custody, he was like screaming, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." One would think if they're telling you I can't breathe, you probably want to take your knee off the guy's neck and stop pushing his face into the ground. Jackson said Arreola was considered healthy before the encounter with the officers. In the hospital's intensive care unit, Arreola had contusions, bruising to his upper torso, arm, and had a neck brace while breathing with help from a ventilator. Brian Dudley and Mike Aguilar, two patrol officers who responded to the initial call in the 700 block of Moss Drive, have been placed on administrative duty while the GBI conducts an investigation. By the time the officers arrived about 5:10 a.m. Monday, Arreola had run to a neighbor's house that sits high on a hill 2 doors away, said Alan Tarvin. The man banged on the door and claimed someone was trying to kill him. When he said that, "I thought to myself, maybe this guy needs some help," Tarvin said. Standing in below freezing weather, the bearded Arreola was wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt, white sneakers, and blue jeans. Seeing the police car 2 doors away, Tarvin told the man that 911 was right behind him. Arreola turned toward the bottom of the driveway and saw the police officers with flashlights. They said, "Come down the hill now," Tarvin said. They knew his name. They called his name. Tarvin said the officers at the driveway commanded Arreola to put his hands where they could see them and walk down the hill. When he didn't comply, Aguilar and Dudley came up the driveway. Arreola was standing near the carport facing the street. He was a few feet from what was a freshly poured concrete landing trimmed with old bricks with sharp edges. "Looking down at the officers, I thought he was fixing to run," Tarvin said. "He stepped off the steps real quick. I thought he was fixing the boat. All I saw was flashlights shining on him." As the officers came up the hill, Arreola's mother came to the house near the mailbox, Tarvin said. The officers said they were taking Arreola into custody. They weren't being aggressive or anything, Tarvin said. He wasn't having it. He went to fighting them. He never swung at them, but when they tried to get his arms, one grabbed his arm and tried to spin him around, and he went off. He fought like a bull. He tried to break loose. The other one grabbed him. All three went down right up there, Tarvin said, pointing to his landing near the front stoop. What appears to be blood is still in the grass, but none was visible on the concrete. "I think his face hit that little pad I just poured this thing," Tarvin said. "I thought that this is what his face hit, because he was here and struggling. When they took him down, he went right down into it. I couldn't see." Tarvin said his porch light, which was on when Arreola arrived, had been turned off by the time police arrived. During the struggle, it was dark. "They tussled with him," he said. "He was like a bull in a china shop. He was not going into custody. He wasn't going in the cuffs." Officers at the scene said the man had a cut above his eye after a more than 7-minute struggle. There were no punches. They were just trying to subdue him, Tarvin said. They were yelling at him the whole time. They told him to quit resisting, "Give us your hands." A third officer on the scene before Arreola was handcuffed. A third officer arrived on the scene before Arreola was handcuffed. Tarvin described one of the original officers as Aguilar, the smaller one, and Dudley, the larger officer. Aguilar was winded during the struggle and needed to catch his breath. He was seen later using an inhaler. Arreola was taken away in an ambulance by emergency medical services personnel. Tarvin said he didn't see blood on the man's face until he was rolled over and stood up. One side of his face, part of his mouth, and nose were covered in blood, he said. By 5:40 a.m., the officers were gone, but other personnel returned 5 minutes later. More than 4 firefighters were knocking on the door and looking for someone who had had a heart attack. Tarvin said he heard on a police radio that the man was in the ambulance at the nearby Piggly Wiggly. They took off running, he said. Tarvin said the yard was filled with officers from the GBI, police department, and professional standards until 11 a.m. Chris Moreland, a neighbor who lives across the street from Tarvin and serves as a reserve deputy for the Russell County Sheriff's Office, said he was awakened by his barking dogs. I know what they had to do to get people down, he said. I was watching. When I was looking, nothing looked excessive to me. I mean, it just looked like they were struggling. He was fighting the whole time. Moreland said that type of stuff is unusual in the area. In the second story, written by Sarah Robinson of the Columbus Ledger-Enquirer, there is a picture that the Arreola family provided that's pretty gruesome in nature. He's on a ventilator. He has a neck brace. He has bandages on his head, and he looks basically incoherent and under some type of medical treatment. There are tubes and all kinds of things running, and he is clearly injured. And I've seen many, many cases where people have been injured. And I know the difference between someone who is faking in an image and something that looks legitimate. He was injured pretty badly in whatever this incident was. The story reads as follows. Defense attorney Stacey Jackson released hospital photos Wednesday morning showing Hector Arreola, the 30-year-old Columbus man who died a day after he was involved in a struggle with police during early Monday's arrest on Moss Drive. Jackson, who represents Hector Arreola's family, said the family is considering filing a lawsuit against the city in the incident currently under investigation by the GBI. They are waiting to receive medical records and autopsy results before making a decision on the lawsuit. We want, obviously, to find the cause of death. From my understanding, the family was told he was suffering from cerebral edema, which is the lack of blood or oxygen to the brain, Jackson said. Obviously, the family does feel that the 2 officers who responded to the scene are directly responsible for Hector's death, because they do feel that his death is a direct result of his encounter with Officer Mike Aguilar and Officer Brian Dudley. Dudley and Aguilar, who were placed on administrative duty amid the GBI investigation, responded to a disorderly call in the 700 block of Moss Drive around 5 a.m. Monday. Alan Tarvin said he saw Arreola run to a neighbor's house, bang on the door, and claim that someone was trying to kill him. Officers arrived on the scene and told Arreola to put his hands where they could see them and walk toward them. Tarvin said the officers approached Arreola after he failed to comply, according to his account of the incident. Tarvin said the officers weren't aggressive, but Arreola fought like a bull as they tried to place him into custody. One witness reported that one of the officers had his knee on the back of Arreola's neck, Jackson said. The attorney said Arreola told the officers he couldn't breathe several times as they were taking him into custody. Arreola was taken to the Columbus Midtown Medical Center, where he suffered from contusions and bruising to his upper torso and arm. He also wore a neck brace while breathing with help from a ventilator before he died at 3 p.m. Tuesday, Jackson said. Columbus Police Chief Ricky Bourne wants the GBI to explore the possibility that Arreola may have had a previous health condition that caused his injuries, but Jackson said Arreola was healthy before the police encounter. Ben Wright contributed to this report.